by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
Lilia able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani. Around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal.
Three of the fans want one. Score! Off the floor! On the board! Paul Kariya!
All right, we are back after a week off. It's all right. You know, we're here. Don't worry about it. We were waiting for it.
We had coming out of the gates, getting yelling at our
I gotta
fans.
address it right
Don't
off
be
the
mad.
bat
We're
because
here.
I know it's gonna come up, but we're here. We're back after the Blues series, and I think we missed one Kings game, maybe. I think so. I think the last one we did was the third Kings game of that four game series. So.
No, because they had back to back, so we didn't do Friday, or do we do Saturday? I don't think
It's
we did
great that we
Saturday.
don't know.
I don't know.
Oh, it's
I wasn't
been,
on the
I believe it's
schedule,
been a
so.
week, but it's all right. We picked a good game. Ducks win 3-2 in the shootout against St. Louis Blues. Playing spoiler, which I guess is all you can hope for at this point in the season. The Blues would have clinched with a win in any fashion. I actually don't know if they clinched because Minnesota lost anyway, but either way, we prevented them from clinching, at least for the time being.
No, that wouldn't make any sense because Minnesota was
Oh,
playing
yeah,
Vegas,
it's
and both of them
Arizona,
were
right?
so
Yeah, so maybe if Arizona
Arizona.
loses tonight, then they clinch anyway, but
they're still,
yeah, at least we did our part. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, we've missed not a lot, but we've also kind of missed a lot over the last three games. The big one, and we'll get to that in our kind of post-game topics, has been the emergence of Comtois-Zegras-Terry as clearly the most fun line we've had in probably the last 2 or 3 years, if not longer. Like, they are dynamic, and
They are fucking fun to watch.
it makes you wonder, I mean, why he even got sent down in the first place. Like, I get it. They wanted to put him at center and not throw him into the fire in the NHL, but he was down there for, 9 games? Put up 12 points. Like,
Torched it, yeah.
and I find it hard to think that, those 9 games he just discovered how to play defense and how to play, center properly. Like, this is a guy who's played center for most of his career. So, like, I get why they're doing it, but at the end of the day, we all know it was because they wanted to keep him from hitting that 1 year off his unrestricted free agent status. I can't remember the exact years, but I think if they had played him for a certain...
I think it's like 25, 26.
Yeah, I think it was like 26,
that.
27, if the year 26, 27, if he was to play over 27 games this year or something, he would become a UFA that season. And now, since he didn't, it's 2027, 2028. But yeah, hey, whatever. At least we get a little taste of it at the end of the year here, because no matter how bad they are, like, they're second last in the league. Like, but Buffalo, if they'd have lost tonight, Buffalo was scarily close to passing them, and the Ducks would have been the worst team in the league. But when you look at the fact that this line is just so fun to watch, you don't even care right now. Like, it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, I mean, at least that's the fun thing to watch. I mean, aside from also maybe kind of that backup thing of Stolarz coming in and playing really, really great. I think that's also been fun to watch. But yeah, that line by itself has been just the best part over the last 2 years to do, so or to watch. So I'm glad that there's finally some sort of chemistry, just that they found something to work where all parts of that line seem to be in sync with each other. So that's the line for a while.
Yeah, and Dave saying in the chat that Saturday's game was great to watch. I think Blue was at the 6-2 win against the Kings. Zegras had a goal and assist in that game. It just looked like a fun game to watch.
That was. I mean, we didn't end up. I don't know if we did a post game on that one, but that was a lot of fun. It seemed just finally blow up.
The thing is too, like, in that game, he had a goal and assist. And you're like, okay, like, finally, like, you look at the last couple games they were together. Probably could have had a couple multi-point games. You head to the first game against St. Louis. He hit the post twice. Had a couple nice passes that guys either hit the post or couldn't finish on. Even this game, nice pass to Comtois, believe at the end of the third. I'm mixing up the end of the third and OT, but I think it was near the end of the third that Comtois got stopped. He had a couple nice chances, a one-timer on the power play as well that got stopped. Looked great in overtime. No points tonight, but he's got 3 points in the last, I think, 5 games now. But it could be 5, it could be 8. Like, he's looked so dangerous, and then when you have the numbers to back that up of all 3 of them and how dangerous they've looked when you look at expected goals and Corsi for percentage and high danger chances for and everything like that, they've just been lights out. And then they haven't sacrificed defense because of that. I think that's the big thing, is you knew this was going to be a fun line offensively, and then you always worry about them just being black holes on the opposite side of the puck where they're just getting shelled and hemmed in when they don't have the puck. But they've been a great forechecking line. They've been good at getting the puck out of their own zone. They've been good defensively. There's really no fault to the way these 3 guys have played together so far.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously, they're not necessarily dominating, but give them a chance to kind of move forward as a group, and, build upon that chemistry and just getting that experience together. But they're tenacious, and it doesn't really matter if it's tenacious in trying to find each other for an offensive chance or, hey, that didn't work, but let's go get the puck back. All 3 of those guys are still after the puck, which is fun to watch someone go like, oh, I missed, but I'm not going to go just run back to center and just, wait for it to come back to me. I'm going to try and go get that back. And if we can't, and the puck does end up getting in our end, they're still chasing it down because they want to create a turnover to start it the other way. So to watch that energy, to want to go get the puck and if you lose it, get it back, that's what every fan would want to watch, in my opinion, where they would just, that's just, you see that effort and that drive and that want to get the puck that has kind of been missing here and there over the last few years on almost all lines, where it's like, well, I'm good at getting an opportunity, but if I miss it, I'm just going to kind of wait back here and figure out how the next play is going to happen. And these guys are just attacking at all sides. So that's all you want.
Yeah, it's literally all you could ask for, is something fun like that to watch. And the fact that, I mean, obviously Zegras is more, I guess, defined as the kid or the kids coming up right now. But Comtois and Terry are still relatively young and considered some of the kids on this team. And to see all 3 of them gelling together on a line, like we've seen a bunch of different kid lines throughout the rebuild years that we've had over the last couple of seasons. This has been by far the most fun of all of those inceptions of the kid line that we've seen with these guys together. And it's not really surprising that Trevor Zegras is kind of at the center of that. We've seen Comtois and Terry together with different centermen over their time, and they've looked good. But as we've kind of said over the last couple of years, these are supporting guys. And when you put them with a guy to support like Trevor Zegras, who can create things out of nothing, that's when you start seeing the magic happen. And that's why we're starting to see guys like Comtois and Terry look so great, because they are great role players and great players to have on a line with somebody like Trevor Zegras. Comtois is a natural goal scorer, can get in the right positions. He's kind of the bulldog of that line. And then you've got Troy Terry, who, is as great as he is defensively, is almost just as good a playmaker and setup man as Trevor Zegras is. And then he's the right-handed shot on that line. I mean, when have we ever seen Troy Terry's confidence this high? Where this, I don't know,
he's pulling moves.
This 10 or 15 game stretch for him where he's literally, outside of Zegras, probably the second most creative player on this team, with the moves that he's pulling off, the passes that he's getting off, and obviously he's put the puck in the back of the net a few times. The pass tonight to Hayden Fleury on the goal was a great pass. He's just looked like a completely different player. And, it was earlier this year that we were all criticizing him. And I was at the forefront of that, criticizing him for not looking that great, for being kind of a step behind all the other Ducks rookies. And then all of a sudden, you look at the end of the season here, and if we put him in a group with Jones and Steele and even Comtois, you could argue that, you could at least make an argument that he's done just as well as Maxime Comtois has this year. I think Comtois still takes the top spot, but Troy Terry's definitely second among those guys in terms of their progression this year.
Yeah, and Comtois was so obvious early on. I mean, he was scoring just, goals that quite frankly, we were desperate for. So, kind of just extra emphasized it. But it probably also put a little bit of a brighter spotlight on the fact that Terry hadn't quite hit that stride yet. And I'll agree with you. And then same thing. I kind of written off Troy Terry for the most part because he just hadn't seen anything. And then over the last 15 or so games, that's definitely turned around. I think everyone was kind of waiting for it. It just wasn't. I was losing confidence in if it was ever gonna happen. So it's good to see that it has happened. It's great to see not only, him and Comtois, but that Zegras fits in that line and makes those guys, even better and gives everyone more confidence. And they're doing so much more than they had at the beginning of the season by being on the Zegras line. They're with Zegras on that line has made that transition, I think, a little bit easier throughout the season. So I think they're in a good spot confidence-wise, that they know that they're good, that they know that they're hemming teams in, and that everyone's hungry to try and improve and get goals and set up plays. So they've got all the tool sets are there. So it's going to be fun next season. Not this one, but next one.
For the last two games will be fun to watch, and then it would just be hype building up for next year.
Yeah.
One thing I want to talk about while we're kind of focusing on this line too, we've talked about their defense a little bit, but the broadcast mentions this probably about 3 or 4 times a game, but Trevor Zegras' defensive commitment and just how well he's played. I mean, face-offs are face-offs. The importance of them will vary depending on who you talk to, but he's been good in the face-off dot. He's played against, I don't know who his matchup was this game. I didn't really get a good look at it, but last game he was matched up against Ryan O'Reilly, one of the best face-off guys in the league, and did an excellent job, I think, of really matching up well against him. I'm not sure if he was matched with O'Reilly again tonight, but he did another good job in the face-off dot. And then just being a responsible center, for a guy who's so creative and so offensive minded and looking to get up the ice and create, he isn't one of those players who just sacrifices defense at the cost of that. Guys like Patrick Laine and Ovi earlier in his career and those types of guys where, okay, he's so gifted offensively, but we got to teach him the defensive side of the game. We're now getting a look at, maybe what a lot of people didn't expect from Zegras is that he's a lot more developed on that side of the game on a very bad team too. Like, it would be very easy for him to just not look great, and you could chalk it up to the Ducks just being a very poor defensive team and a very poor team in general. But he's looked great. Like, I can't really argue or dispute anything he's done since coming up 4 games ago or 5 games ago and shifting to center ice. He's done everything you would hope a center iceman would do. And things that we've kind of picked apart in Sam Steele's game and Isaac Lindstrom and some of the other guys who've come up and played center, they haven't really done that complete game where the defensive side of the game and the offensive side of the game are clicking right off the bat.
Yeah, and and especially given that this is his first year, just removed from college, just removed from the World Juniors, just removed from playing in AHL, a couple stints already. So to see him already kind of have a grasp on all aspects of the game and start to be the most dominant line, if that's his beginning baseline, that's exciting to think about moving forward, about how much more that's going to progress. Every aspect gets better and better year after year, especially with someone as much potential as he has, and someone that is engaged in the game and wants to learn and get better. Because he's always talking. I see him, the cutaway before they go to commercial timeout. He's talking to the refs about certain things, and he's talking on the bench. And so that shows me somebody who's enjoying the game, but is also learning to get even better at it. So when you have that enthusiasm to get better, and you're already really kind of, impressing at a very, base level, that just makes it all that much more fun to watch where his career is going to go.
Yeah, even just looking at next year, he's going to come into the season likely a few pounds heavier with some more muscle on, which is going to help his game.
That's the other thing, yeah.
Especially down the middle of the ice, and a couple years down the road, just he's going to look like a completely different player in terms of his build and what he looks like as an athlete. And, you think getting a few more weapons, even if he's still playing with Comtois-Terry, but for the power play, and some more weapons in the Ducks lineup, that the focus isn't really on this line. Because I'm sure, we're going into these last 2 games against Minnesota, there's going to be a huge focus on shutting down that line, because it's really the only thing going for the Ducks right now, and that's only going to continue to get worse as they progress and put up more points.
Better, more notoriety.
There's going to be a huge focus on shutting those guys down. So when you get some more weapons in the Ducks lineup, where maybe they get some easier matchups for Trevor Zegras, all that's going to just bode well for his production in the future and his development as a number 1 center for the Ducks. So it's the future's bright. It looks great. It's great to see this. This is what you would really want to see. At the end of the season here, Jamie Drysdale came back in this game. It was fun to watch him back. Yeah, he had a turnover that eventually led to a goal, but we didn't even expect him to be here with the Ducks this year. So be able to see Zegras take massive steps forward, Comtois-Terry really get things going, Drysdale adjust so quickly and so comfortably to the NHL. All of a sudden, it doesn't look as dark and dim as it felt at the beginning of the season. And then you've got another, potentially the second best odds likely going into the draft lottery. It may be a shot at the best odds if Buffalo can win a couple games here and the Ducks drop either 1 or 2 against Minnesota. So you've got to, if you finish with those second best odds, the furthest you can fall is 4, which would be the highest pick the Ducks have had, I think, since Bobby Ryan at 4th overall. Yeah. And the draft this year isn't as great at the top, or there aren't as many headlining guys at the top, or they have been in the past, but you're still adding another exceptional player to this rebuild that's likely a lot closer to the NHL than some of the other guys at the bottom half of this draft. So all of a sudden, you're looking at 3 very talented key pieces to this organization, potentially all being here next year, depending on who the Ducks take with that pick in the top 4. It's starting to look a little bit better. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, at least.
Yeah, it feels so Ducks to have this great opportunity and no legitimate franchise player coming into the draft. Like, you've always had a franchise player over the last 5 or 6 years, and then finally we get that chance where we're getting a top 4 guy and possibly a top 1 guy, and it's like, well, the top 4, they're, take your pick. They're all kind of the same, or, they vary very little, but there's no legit number 1. So it's the 1 year where we finally get that guy, and then it's oh, there's really, all right, we'll take that guy, I guess.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel like it's, if this had happened last year and there's Lafreniere there and there's, any other opportunity, or, the year before, what was it, Kakko and
Hughes, Kakko and Hughes, yeah.
Hughes, so I mean, you think oh yeah, whoever gets first is really kind of bumping up their chances. Now whoever gets first is they're bumping about as much as the guy who's getting second, third, or fourth.
Yeah, and I mean, even it's a lot easier, I think, to say that when you're going into this draft year and there's no, there is no race for 1 or 2 because there's a lot of guys in that mix, but not to say Hughes and Kakko aren't going to be good or aren't going to be superstars or aren't superstars already, but their progression to the NHL and to being superstars for their teams has been a bit slower. They had decent rookie seasons. They've had a lot better sophomore seasons this year, but it hasn't been, an Austin Matthews type jumpstart to their NHL careers. So, just because there isn't that headlining kind of fight for number 1 this year, the guys at the top, we still don't know. And in a year where scouting has been severely hampered due to the pandemic,
yeah, they're not getting their chances either.
They're getting viewings, but how much of that, would change in a regular season? How much would we have a bona fide number 1 and a guy fighting for number 2? If we had all these guys playing a full regular season this year, it's likely we would have that, and we wouldn't really be sitting here saying, oh, 1 of 7 guys could go first overall. So
yeah, well, once again, it's just a very Ducks thing to happen. Now we get the really good pick, but hey, we haven't been able to scout anybody because this is the 1 year where everything just sucks for actually being able to scout talent. So but hopefully the Ducks scouting staff is always top notch in my mind. So they can usually find somebody, and sometimes will work out. Not Gritchy, but in other cases it works out every so often.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and honestly, whether they fall at first, second, third, or fourth, the top guy on their board could be available to either one of those spots, just because it's kind of all over the place. And we had a question in the chat from Jay Southern asking, where the Ducks could go, whether it's a center, a scoring winger, or a defenseman. They really have, plenty of options at the top of guys kind of filling out all those spots. Matty.
what would you pick?
It's honestly tough. Like I every day I feel like I'm making a different decision on that. I think bringing in a dynamic scoring winger would probably be my first pick. Just when you look at how well Trevor Zegras has adapted, Jamie Drysdale looks great. Hampus Lindholm's still going to be part of this team, but you can make an argument for all of them. Like Dylan Guenther would probably be my top pick because he's complete scoring winger and can kind of do everything, and he's a lot closer to the NHL than maybe some of these other guys are. But Matty Beniers is projecting to be an excellent center, and having a 1-2 punch of Zegras and Beniers in the middle for the foreseeable future, especially for you guys being two American centers down the middle, would be fun for a lot of guys. And on defense, bringing in another Hughes brother and having Hughes and Drysdale as your future 1-2 punch on defense like that. You can't really go wrong anywhere you go here, unless you take the goaltender, unless you take Jesper Wallstedt.
No, there's no. I don't think there's any way they're taking the goaltender.
No.
Now with Dostal back there, they've got their ace right now in Gibson, and Stolarz. My mind is just done perfectly. I would probably say center because I just feel like they're gonna need that. It seems like Henrique is trade bait at this point. I mean, they're going to keep him until they can trade him, and that's about it. Getzlaf, I mean, he's there, but maybe he's not, and then maybe it's a very smaller role. And then there maybe is your Derek Grant that sticks around on the fourth line. But I feel like as we start trying to move forward, Getzlaf's going to be gone, Henrique will be gone, Grant probably, unless he really turns things around, is probably gone, and I just don't see a whole lot of center depth other than Ludstrom in the Ducks pipeline coming up. So I would feel that they would maybe want to try and strengthen at least that portion.
Yeah,
of it. We could always trade for that too.
Yeah, but it is the hardest thing to get, and one of the most valuable things to have in the league is two excellent 1-2 punch centers down the middle. And for the Ducks to have a creative offensive dynamo like Trevor Zegras, and then to bring in a guy who's more of like a 200-foot center in Matty Beniers, like you've got the perfect combo almost to have Beniers as your second go-to option, who you can also use on the penalty kill and to shut down the opposition's best players, and then get a better matchup for Trevor Zegras and send him out there in a more favorable matchup for him to do what he does best, right? And you look at the Ducks system right now, they have a lot of talented wingers who maybe aren't, of that elite level of like a top 5 in the draft, but Comtois-Terry have proven that, they're looking like they could be top 6 wingers for the Ducks in the future. So you've got 2 of those 4 spots potentially filled. Jacob Perreault is still on his way, and I think he's going to be, one of the Ducks' top goal scorers in the future, so that could be your third spot. And then if you really need another winger after that, you can get that in free agency. You can draft lower in the draft, and a guy might sneak up and be a talented winger there. So I feel like the winger side of things, that they're may be easier to find.
Yeah, might be easier to work out. Center's a little tougher.
Yeah, center and definitely defense. And I could see the Ducks going that. Like if they have first overall, I could see them taking Matty Beniers and going with the 1-2 punch down the middle. But how does Bob Murray pass up on a 6'5", 210-pound defenseman in Owen Power? There's a lot of ways they could go. I'd be happy with anything. I have a few of my favorites of who they could go for, but it's not going to be one of those years where Trevor Zegras falls to the Ducks at 9, and you're like, holy crap, like that's ridiculous. Like they're going to have a high enough pick where whoever's there, you could, it's going to be a good pick, and you can't really be mad with whoever went before or whoever came after. Like they're all kind of in that same grouping this year of a kind of a top 5 or 6 guys. So
But the only thing that's for certain is everyone will hate whoever Bob Murray picks.
Yeah. I like. There's only one doomsday scenario that's possible. I know last year it was the Ducks taking Jake Sanderson over Jamie Drysdale, and that would be like the doomsday scenario of that day. And thank God the Senators bailed us out of that.
Yeah.
Well, not to say Sanderson's bad, but it was kind of the doomsday scenario that everybody wrote up. To this year, it was really out of left field. It would be, like I said earlier, if the Ducks took Jesper Wallstedt and took a goaltender with their potential top 5 pick in this year's draft. That would be unreal. Like that's the only way you fail with that. You could take anybody who's ranked in that kind of top 7 in that spot outside of the goaltender, and you do fine. You do fine with any of them.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine the Ducks at any point feel that they're weak in the goaltending department and need to add a goalie.
Yeah.
They're so high on who they have that they're good.
Yeah. All right, we'll wrap up the Comtois-Terry Zegras discussion here. Obviously, it's been a big talking point. I had a few stats on them already kind of mentioned here, but heading into this game, in the 4 games that they've been together, they had a 64.2 Corsi for percentage, a 71.27 expected goals for percentage, and a 73.78 scoring chances for percentage. So they're dominating things offensively. Zegras has a goal and 2 assists in those 5 games. Comtois has a goal and 1 assist, and then Terry picked up an assist to go with the goal that he had as well. So maybe the point totals aren't necessarily there, but that's kind of to be expected. The chances are there, and I think that's the big thing is the points will come as long as they're continuing to get the chances. And you take a few of those posts that Zegras hit, that crossbar that Terry hit a few games ago, those go in the back of the net. Zegras is sitting in 5-5, Terry's sitting at 3-5, Comtois could be sitting at 3 or 4-5, and that looks a lot better, right? So it's for me, it's the chances are there, and eventually the production's going to come with it.
Yeah, and I've always said that it's like that's why sometimes the stats or the fancy stats or the advanced stats don't necessarily show what the eye test can. Where you can look at it and go like, man, they dominated. The shot just went a little wide, or someone came in and just at the last moment they decided I need to try and make one more move and it didn't quite work out. But if they're creating those chances, they're getting opportunities. Eventually, the more opportunities you get with that skill, it's going to go in. The fact that they're younger, they will learn a little bit more as they kind of get that experience of when to shoot and when to pass and when to hold on to it and when to do whatever they got to do. So I'm a big fan of chances. I think that's what makes the NHL more exciting, not necessarily more goals, just that the opportunity is there, the excitement is there, because it can be oh so close. And who knows, a goalie makes just a stupid save. You run into Jonathan Quick that one game where he's just making stupid saves that he has no business making.
Yeah, you're going to get games like this. And again, that speaks to the small sample size here. We're talking about 5 games. They still have 3 points, 2 points, and 2 points in those 5 games, which is really bad production when you look at how the Ducks season has been offensively for a lot of these guys. Like, that's up there with kind of top production for the Ducks over a 5-game stretch, other than when Rickard Rakell was going off there for, I think, 8 or 9 games where he had 15 points or something. That was kind of the best streak and best run we've seen. So can't complain. They look good, and that's all we can really hope for. It's a question from Jay Southern I want to cover before we move into their other topics. It was about Ryan Getzlaf. He said, I suspect Getzy returns for a year or 2. What are our thoughts on that situation? So, everybody knows this, but I'll lay the situation. Ryan Getzlaf's a pending unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. His $8.5 million plus contract comes to an end, and there's been rumors that he could retire, that he could come back for 1 year, 2 year, whatever. What do you think? What do you think is the likely option for Getzy at the end of the year?
I think he'll do a very similar thing to Ryan Miller, and that is to just continue to sign 1-year contracts that are probably going to be a little bit more team friendly, just to kind of get more leverage or more space to add in extra talent to kind of help the team kind of grow. You're not going to find more of a organizational guy than him. So I think he'll be flexible. It's a very, very I'll say like a bro relationship with Bob Murray, but they're kind of on the same page. It's like Getzlaf knows he's in the twilight of his career. His role will diminish, but he still has leadership. He still wants to be around. He wants the Ducks to be good. If he can't contribute enough to be good as a player, he'll step away as a player, and I feel he'll still be around in the organization in some other capacity. So this is a guy who is like, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to look at my production. I'm going to look at my family situation and see if these things are still lining up. I don't think he's going to be tied into a long-term contract. I think he's fine just doing the 1 year thing and just taking it year by year, kind of see where everything's at. That's good for the Ducks, gives them flexibility, usually means they don't have to spend a whole lot of money, and that should work. I mean, this is going to be, kind of a collaborative union for the next couple of years. But he's got maybe another 2 years at most. I can't really see him going 3 years, especially with the age that his kids are at. I'm sure he's kind of in that transition to after hockey play, where he wants to kind of just be around, support his kids, have his kids grow up, and that sort of deal. Kind of same thing Ryan Miller has talked about too. Hey, my wife's been my rock, and she's been really great. My kid is trying to get into it too, and I kind of want to be around, but I'm still going to be around the game in some capacity. So I think it's year to year, and the Ducks can still use his leadership and a strong center. So I think he does that just year by year.
Yeah, and it's not like he's been bad either. Like he's still been a good player for this team, and I think in a better team. Like when we looked at the fact that Vegas was interested in him at the deadline, him being a third line center on a very good team, he's a valuable piece to have, not only because of his leadership, but he's still a good hockey player. Like he's not putting up the points he used to by any means, but he's still making an impact offensively. He's still a great player on the defensive side of the puck. He's still an asset to this team, even with them being not good right now. So I think he's back for at least 1 year. I think it was Jay Southern in the chat saying that like Getzlaf, if he is going to retire, deserves like a proper farewell. Whether that's like a Kobe kind of farewell tour across the league where he's getting gifts and stuff from everybody. I don't think maybe Getsy's quite at that.
I don't think it's quite at
that league wide level, but it would be something where we kind of hopefully know that this is his last season at the beginning of the year, so they can actually put some focus to a proper kind of farewell tour for Getsy. I know Miller and Backus here were kind of we speculated it, but we didn't find out until the last handful of games here. I would hope if Getzlaf was planning on retiring, it would be something we knew kind of at the beginning of the season, so that
kind of like a Solani thing where he's like, all right, Bob, 1 more year.
Yeah.
He threw his golf clubs into the lake.
Except Solani recorded like 2 of those videos where it's no, 1 more year. No, 1 more year. I'm back.
Oh, all right. Ignore that first one.
But yeah, I would expect at a max 2. I can't see him signing a 3-year deal. Even if he was eventually going to play 3 more seasons, I just can't see him realistically signing a 3-year contract. I think 1 or 2 is likely. I don't see him retiring at the end of the season. And the fact that he's nearing 1,000 points, he comes back next year, he probably hits it in a full 82 game season, or he should hit it. I think he's only 13 or 14 points away from it at this point, under 20 I believe now. So yeah, he's back next year. The cap hit, I have honestly no idea what that's gonna look like. The Ducks will have some flexibility. I think it's less than 5. It should be less than 5. But on a 1-year deal, you never know, because you could really give them whatever you want, whatever the room kind of lets you. You obviously don't want to go to the cap ceiling to give him a lot of money, but
I don't think he's looking for that too. He got paid on the last contract for sure, because he's been getting paid the last couple of years. Was it $7 million, $8 million?
Yep.
He hasn't been producing at a $7-8 million clip. So you sign that to get paid for what's going to happen over the years. So he signed a long contract with big money throughout it. So now it kind of depends where he really wants the team to go, because he should know, I've made a lot of money, I can contribute, but not anywhere near where I was. I I almost kind of look more like back at like Joe Thornton and what he was doing kind
Yeah.
of towards the end time there with San Jose. It was like he was signing $1 million contracts. I don't think Getzlaf's going to be that
Didn't
generous.
didn't Jumbo sign like a 1 year $7 million deal at one point?
Oh yeah, he
Like
did. But
before
then he
he
do
did the
like a 1 year
yeah,
1 million
I believe he
too.
did, but there's that
Yeah,
one
so
year where his contract was up, and the first next
uh,
deal he signed was like a 1 year $7 million
and
contract.
then he like blew his knee out like 10 games in or
It
something
was
like
like
that. But
one last final payday, and then his plan after that was like, okay, I'm gonna get one
I'm just gonna
big
play it for
payday,
whoever I
and now
want
I'm just
to.
gonna get paid a league minimum for 1 year deals to try and win a
Whoever.
cup.
Yeah, so I think we'll get somewhere in between. So my hope is, with Getzlaf, he over an 82 game season, he might put up 30 or 40 points. So every 10 points gets you $1 million. So somewhere in that $3 to $4 million range,
Yeah,
1 year at a time, just see where that production's
yeah,
at.
we're not really at that point where the Ducks need him to like sign a team friendly deal. He would. I fully think he would, but it's not like we.
I just think if he signs a $3 or $4 million deal, they just took off another 3 or 4 million off of whatever his old contract
Yeah,
was. So I mean, going from this year to next, they still have the same Getzlaf essentially, but they don't have to pay him that extra 3 or 4 million.
yeah,
So
but like I mean,
makes
it's
more
not like
sense.
the Ducks are competitive. And they need that cap space for other players to kind of compete, right? So it's not like he has to sign a $2 million deal to be a team friendly deal to kind of get the Ducks back into the playoffs or whatever. I don't think they're going to be at that point next year. So I can still see him, taking a bit of a discount if he was expecting 5 or 6 and signs for 3 or 4. I think probably around the 4.5 million is what I think I would expect it to fall between. But I know I forget I think it is Evolving Wild or Evolving Hockey who has like a contract projection, model that they have out there, and they had him making just over 2 in his contract. I'm not sure what goes into that into their model, but that would be surprising to me if he took just over 2.
See, I wouldn't be, and once again, it's gonna come down to the generosity of what Getzlaf's willing to do. Like if he goes to Bob, Bob's like, listen, this is our plan. This is for the next year. This is who we want to try and bring in, or this, that, and the other. Once again, it's a little hard for me to think just over 2. But if he goes like, listen, just sign me for 2 or just over 2, that gives you a ton of room to kind of work with and see what you can kind of do. Because at this point, I don't need to make a whole lot of money. I just want to do what's best for the team. But I'm not going to do league minimum or anything because I'll be producing better than that. Otherwise, if you're going to pay me league minimum, I'm just playing for the love of the game at that point. But I could see three or four.
Yeah,
Like I said, somewhere between what Jumbo Joe was doing 1 year and the following year. So
yeah. Well, we go from one guy who could be retiring or could be signing a contract to, I guess, 2 guys who are retiring, and one of them potentially played his final game of his career tonight, David Backes, and it's great to see him get recognized, especially if that is his final game in a place where he spent the really the prime years in most of his career in St. Louis. But they're as much as I love the guy, there isn't really an attachment, I think, there from Ducks fans with David Backes and identifying him with the Ducks. Like, even with him being in Anaheim, like I still identify him as a St. Louis Blues player. You know what I mean? Because of where he spent the main bulk of his career and where he did most of his damage as a really top power forward in this league was with the Blues. So it's nice that they kind of planned the send off for him to get this last game in St. Louis of the season, in the city as well, and have this send off. It was nice for him. But the big one, I think, for Ducks fans, and there is a bit of an attachment with the team here, is Ryan Miller, because he's been here for a decent amount of time now. He's done a lot for this
4
organization.
years.
And he's played some good hockey. Like, he's been a valuable player to this team, even this year, where he's 41 now, and he's done a job as a 41-year-old backup, which not many guys can say that. And he's hit all the milestones he would want to hit in his career. He's got the most games played of any American netminder. Does he have the most wins? He got
Most
the
wins,
most wins.
yeah, over Jonathan Quick currently.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Quick will likely pass that, but at least for now, he's got the most wins. And that's the one I think that kind of hits you a bit more on like an emotional level, as a connection to him as a Ducks player. And yeah, man, it sucks to see him go because he's been a good player for the Ducks.
Yeah, I think it hits everyone a little bit harder when Miller's retiring versus Backus, just because Ryan Miller's impact versus Backus's impact. Like Backus came in, it was literally we were pretty much taking on a
Yeah,
contract to move out players, and so nothing against Backus. Backus had many great seasons in St. Louis, and like I said, that was it. And he bounced to Boston, had injuries, kind of wasn't quite the same player in that system, and they looked to move him out. We got him. Glad we have him. I mean, he not to say he was the guy who was going to be a savior or just put up all the points, but he I don't want to say served a purpose. It sounds like it's callous, but it's someone that did help in his own way, whether it's through leadership experience, something they can kind of pass along, and that's what you do at the towards the end of your career is you try and help the other guys learn what you've learned through the game. But with Ryan Miller, I mean, that was a guy who we relied on. Gibby would either go through injuries or bad spells, and it's really, I mean, for Ducks fans, we've always had good goalies. It seems like for the most part, we've always had at least a one, if not a 1-2, and he was so good at being in my opinion, still could still be a starter, quite honestly. So we essentially had two starters, and you never heard any complaints out of him. It was always year to year, but he always wanted to play. He always wanted to come back, and he wanted to be with Anaheim. I mean, at any point, he probably could have had that chance to play over in LA if he wanted to, but he liked it here. It kind of felt more like not only did he contribute more, he wanted to be part of Anaheim versus being traded and you've got a contract that nobody else wants, like Backus. So I think that's kind of the main difference. But I think both of them have done a nice job for the team and the fans, I guess, for the most part.
He's easily the best American goaltender of all time, right? Like
I have a hard time picking out somebody who's better.
the people he was close to in the records he passed were Van
Yeah,
Briesbroek, Quick is up there. Um,
like Richter would probably be another
yes,
one.
just what he's accomplished. He didn't win a Stanley Cup, right? Miller didn't.
No, he never did, but he also always played on just crap
Yeah,
teams.
he
So
got close with
the
the
only time
Sabres.
say, yeah, he got close, but I don't think he even went to the finals with the Sabres
No, they
once.
were just a really good
And
team
I
when he
mean,
was there, and they made it to a couple conference finals, I think.
Eastern
Yeah,
Conference Finals, yeah, they made it to a couple conference finals. But I mean, for him, for literally Dominik Hasek, you would think that like, oh yeah, that's the best goalie ever for Buffalo, and then Ryan Miller comes in, and Ryan Miller, you could easily argue, has been the best goalie ever for Buffalo. So I mean, even the fact that you're able to compare Dominik Hasek, or be in the same conversation as that, that's great. In Buffalo, they had some good teams, but I mean, they weren't ever lighting it up. And so, it was always going to fall on Ryan Miller to propel that team into a Stanley Cup or to win a Stanley Cup. Then he's on Vancouver. He spent a very brief time in St. Louis, and then he was on the Ducks team that was good the very first season. And then what have we been the last 3 seasons? I mean, he's a great goalie that has had to carry bad teams for the most part, which sucks. But I mean, at the same time, if you can do that for your entire career and not become obsolete or just be viewed among the league as like, wow, look at his numbers. They or look at the wins, look at the Stanley Cups. He doesn't have it. We got to get somebody younger, newer. He's playing at a 41. I mean, that longevity is crazy.
yeah, yeah, and even internationally, what he did too. I mean, he played for the
Well, that's
U.S.
true.
in a
bring it up.
Yeah, in a tough time for their program. When you look at, the powerhouses in Canada and Russia and even Sweden at the time as well, he was the face of that team at times, and was the kind of the only one of the only mainstays on that team, as a guy who was always going to be the starting netminder no matter who else was there. And then obviously we know the 2010 Winter Olympic Games, and he had a great game
There it is.
in that
There it
game,
is.
but ultimately Sid was just too much there. But
Yeah, that one Canadian guy.
Jay Southern in the chat had a question about Miller. Does he make the Hall of Fame based off his career?
I have a hard time seeing him not do it. The one thing he really, in my opinion, doesn't have is just the Stanley Cup. But once again, I think if you look at the teams he's played for when he played for them, it's hard to put it on him that he wasn't good enough to make it there. The fact that he's 41 and has played as many years, I think he came into the league in 2000. So we're talking about a 21-year career, the most winningest American-born goalie, and his numbers speak for himself. So it's hard to win a Stanley Cup in any fashion, but I have a hard time thinking of somebody who's won, and I think he's like 14th all time. He's got more than Dominik Hasek. He's got more than a lot of great goalies, and kind of like a Luongo situation. It's like, well, do you really fault the guy for not winning a Stanley Cup, or so it depends. If it depends where you place your value. If it's about Stanley Cups, then you probably say no. But if it's, well, look at the body of work. Was he dominant? And was he dominant in his era? And for how many eras was he dominant? How many seasons?
Yeah.
And you can always say Ryan Miller was always one of those top goalies. And even when he was a backup, he was a top goalie, even as a backup. So I think that in itself makes him a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and when we talk about the Hockey Hall of Fame, we always have to remember that it's not just their success in the NHL as well. It's throughout their entire career. And you look at the fact that he has an Olympic silver gold medal. He's got 2 NCAA titles. He's got
a silver gold medal, the ever rare silver gold medal.
Did I say silver gold?
You said silver gold.
So he's got a Olympic Games silver medal, 2 NCAA titles, a Hobey Baker Award, a Vezina Trophy. Like, he's got, I think, just enough to do it and to get in there. And then obviously being, the winningest American goaltender of all time, the most games played, like, those things I think matter when you're looking at being inducted to the Hall of Fame. Is he a first ballot? Maybe not. But does he get in there? I think he does. I think based off everything he's done in his career, it's hard to not put him in there. I think he deserves it based off just how good he's been for how long, and how good he's been at every level of hockey, every level of his career, whether it be internationally, in in the NCAA, and then eventually in the NHL, and even in the AHL when he was there for a brief stint too. He was picking up awards in the couple seasons he was there. So he's really gotten it done at every level. But obviously, yes, that Stanley Cup, I think if he had one, that would tip him over the edge, and we'd be talking about he's a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame. It wouldn't even be a question.
But then you'd also have to ask the same thing. I mean, if you're trying to comparing it that way, what about Lundqvist?
Yeah.
Because Lundqvist has never won it. He's been to the Stanley Cup Finals once, lost to the Kings. Idiot. But, yeah, so, I mean, but you have to look at that, how dominant Lundqvist was for many years. And I feel like, if you're going to look at an NHL career, it's like, were you dominant, or were you one of the dominant players in your position for how many years? I mean, you can do it for 1 or 2 years. You start doing it for 5, 6 years. It's like, oh crap, we got to play against Ryan Miller. This one's going to be a little tough. He's really going to bail them out a lot. Like, I mean, if that's it, or it's like you're a winger, you're Paul Kariya, doesn't win a Stanley Cup, but it's like, all right, this guy, he is dominant. He's someone we're gonna have to work our game around. I mean, you do that long enough over a career, that makes you Hall of Fame material, in my eyes.
Yeah.
Are you dominant in your position?
Yeah, and even in Lundqvist's case, like, I think if you ask people, is Ryan Miller a Hall of Famer? Is Henrik Lundqvist a Hall of Famer? I think most people would say, definitely Henrik Lundqvist, and then maybe Ryan Miller. But I think it's maybe a little bit unfair too, because in career stats, and accolades, they're fairly close. They both have one Vezina. They both have that Olympic silver medal. Lundqvist does have the gold medal at the Olympics as well, but
Ryan Miller is a silver gold.
He's a silver gold.
I mean, you can't beat silver gold.
Well, Lundqvist is a gold silver. So. But
yeah, it's a little bit better.
That's fairly close. Obviously, Lundqvist has the advantage in just the amount of games he's played in total wins. I think he's got close to 80 to 100 more wins than Ryan Miller does. So maybe he's a bit more. He's probably a first ballot, where Ryan Miller, I think, is maybe a first ballot, but likely a second kind of guy in second time around. But I think they're both Hall of Famers. And I think Ryan Miller maybe doesn't get enough credit for what he's done over his entire career, because he spent the last 5 or 6 years of his career as a backup, where Lundqvist has been really a starter up until last year or the year before that. And Ryan Miller, like you said, probably could have been a starter on a different team, but he chose to be close to his family and take a backup role behind John Gibson. And even if he had went to LA, he would have been a backup behind Jonathan Quick. So he made that decision for his family and what was best for his career at that point. But I think if he had have stayed a starter, this again wouldn't even be a question of whether he is a Hall of Famer or not.
Well, side note, Arizona lost to the Kings, idiots. So I think St. Louis clinches that last spot, I believe.
Well, good for them. I think that means my prediction of the West Division came true. The 4 teams that had making the playoffs made the playoffs. So.
Yeah, but you had Minnesota at 4.
Did I? I thought I was high on Minnesota. I'm gonna have to check the tapes on that one.
No, you said the top 3 were solid, like completely locked in, and that was going to be a Colorado first, Vegas, then St. Louis, and then anyone could be fighting over these other spots. But I'm going to go Minnesota.
I think you're right, but
I'm
happy to be wrong, because Minnesota was a fun team to watch this year.
Yeah, for sure. It surprised me, for sure.
All right, quick things. We'll cover the game, just in really, really brief here, and then we got to talk about the Tom Wilson incident, because for the last bit of the show here, we got to cover that. But basically, just kind of quick notes about this game. Volkov was out. Danton Heinen took his place on the second line, and then obviously David Backes was the new face in the lineup for his kind of night in this game. Steele came back in for Derek Grant and took his place on the fourth line to play with Backes and Delorier. Drysdale came back in after missing the last game due to a lower body injury for Josh Mahura, and then Anthony Stolarz got the start with John Gibson getting the night off. Goal scorers on the night, Max Jones picked up a goal. It was nice, in the right place, and kind of a typical Max Jones goal to deflect it in.
That's where he's going to score most of his goals, so just keep doing it.
And Sam Carrick picked up an assist, which was nice to see him
on that one.
Continue to get on the board. He's looked great since being called up to the Ducks, so I can't complain with his production. Looks like a shoe-in over Grant or Delorier or even Rowney when he's healthy next year as a fourth liner for the Ducks.
Yeah, especially if he's willing to fight, so... Quite honestly, we kind of need a little bit, I hate to say grit, but we need a little bit more of that, stand up and fight. It can't just be Delorier all the time and nobody else. So
he just competes. Like, he just works hard. You just love a guy like that. So
again, if you're giving the effort, you're going to endear yourself to fans all over. So and to management, or at least it should. So.
Yeah, hopefully it should. Hayden Fleury was the other goal scorer for the Ducks, got his second of the game. Nice pass from or second.
As many as Hakanpää.
Yeah, as Hakanpää has too. With Hakanpää's goals with the Hurricanes were nice too. He had a booming slap shot from the point. I think the second one was a backhander. I can't remember it. Funny enough, I was watching those 2 games where he scored, of course.
He scored. What do we do?
He hasn't scored since.
I'm surprised he didn't score any goals from blocking shots. Blocks it on his own.
I don't know how many own goals
back
he has. He might have 4 or 5 because he had a fair amount with the Ducks. I love that guy. I can't hate him too much. But Hayden Fleury has filled the shoes nicely. He's looked good.
He's gotten better. I feel like he's gotten better game after game.
Yeah.
I think he's kind of settling in a little bit better. I think making good decisions.
Him and Drysdale have been a good pairing together, which has been nice to see Jamie back on the right, and then for It's again just like the young kids line up front on forward. It's nice to see kind of two of the kids in a sense. I know Fleury's a bit older, but two of the new guys at least gel on a pairing, because we're so used to seeing the typical pairings over the last couple seasons. Fowler, Lindholm, Manson, Shattenkirk, and them all kind of put together, and Larson thrown in there, and to see Drysdale make the team, which we didn't expect at the beginning of the year, and then Fleury to come in and them to do so well together. It's one of those bright spots. It's nice to see them do well together. And then some exciting overtime play, and then Troy Terry plays hero in the shootout. Zegras came close to scoring, just kind of stuck to the back foot of Binnington, but the shootout master Troy Terry getting it done, pulling off a nice move.
Yeah, he bubbled the crap out of that one too.
Still got it though.
I thought he was gonna lose it. It was like, damn it, Terry. Because of course Allers is talking about how great he's been in the past, and then he just starts bobbling. Oh, great! Allers jinxed him. I wasn't particularly impressed with Zegras' move. I never like it when a player comes in and then just slows up and then just starts doing like a billion different moves to try and get a goalie to all of a sudden. If you're going to get a goalie to bite, you come in with speed and make it happen, because then they got to make a quick decision. If you're sitting there going slow and you do like 80 different moves, unless you're Patrick Kane, which I guess he's trying to emulate, unless you're that guy, it's kind of easy for a goalie to just kind of wait, and then when the flick of the wrist happens, you drop, and unless this guy's putting it into a corner, you're probably in good shape. So I would always say go as quick as you can, pretend someone's right on your ass, and you've just got to try and make a quick move, because those are the ones that are harder for goalies.
Yeah, he's got the hands to do it. To be honest, he played it well despite coming in fairly slow. His play there was to open up the 5-hole.
I'm telling him this is how you're supposed to do it.
He should have. I agree. I like it when they come in fast. I think it and putting a move on the netminder, it's a lot harder for them to stop it at that point. He did open up the 5-hole. He just didn't really get all of what he wanted on the shot, and shot it a bit closer to the pad. But he's going to get plenty of chances.
I'm an expert. Trevor Zegras needs to listen to me.
He should emulate Barkov, and his Barkov for me is
God. You and your Barkov love.
the best shootout guy since Datsuk, in the sense that you don't know. You don't know what's happening. He's got 7 or 8 different.
It's direction, right?
So.
Yeah.
Maybe Zegras will get to that point, hopefully. All right, Tom Wilson. We have to get to this. I know Pat and Jay, or not Pat and Jay, Pat and Steven.
I'm right here. How are you doing?
Pat and Steven were eager.
No one knows who I am.
Discuss.
I'm always somebody else.
We were kind of, you weren't as adamant on this point in the chat, but Pat and Steven.
No, you guys were losing your S over it, and I just started throwing out funny memes and gifs. But yeah, I mean, I don't like it. I think Tom Wilson crossed a line. Scrums happen. I'll give you that. But if you're looking at it, Tom Wilson's stick is under Bushevitz's throat, and then he's punching his head. On top of that, I don't care if he's got his glove on. He's punching and trying to lift his stick. That's not good for anybody's neck in any situation. Yeah. So that alone seems like egregious to me, and maybe oversteps the bounds of what you should be allowed to do. And to just be slapped with $5,000 just does two things. One, it pisses off the team. Probably pisses off the regular people. But I can also understand that maybe it's because it's also Tom Wilson that a lot of people seem to be getting far more upset. Because just the very next day, Crosby's doing something that he shouldn't be doing either. And that's punching a dude's head into the ice. And people aren't nearly as upset about that. So my stance is something that egregious where you can look at it and go like, in no way was this acceptable, and giving him a $5,000 fine is literally not going to make a single bit of difference. He's literally going to go like, okay, well, as long as there's a scrum in the net, I can kind of do whatever the hell I want because it's a scrum.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the message you should necessarily be sending. Scrums happen, and like the Panarin thing, that it was it was unfortunate, but when Panarin goes in and becomes part of the melee, and he's picking up a fight essentially with a bigger guy, even if he's defending his teammate, he's going to have to realize you are about to engage in some sort of physical altercation. So you better be ready for it. And if you're picking on a guy much bigger and stronger than you, and you think, well, I just jumped on his back and that should be it, and he starts ragdolling you, then you're kind of putting yourself in a spot that's going to be really hard to defend. If Tom Wilson pulls Panarin out of a pile and starts ragdolling him, then we got a different situation. But my biggest problem is just what he was doing to Buchnevich the whole time. That was my biggest thing, and that's what ended up causing all the other things that happened afterwards. So I think the initial action was the thing that should have been suspendable, not necessarily what happened afterwards, but I think it led to that. That's my thought.
Yeah, and I think, Pat's whole thing of this, and obviously he'll come on and defend himself at some point near the end of the year here.
Later time, but he's not here now, so he's
was that scrums happen all the time, and we're only mad because it's Tom Wilson, which I think is half true. Like you said, the Crosby incident the night after wasn't maybe as bad, but it was still comparable. Pushed a guy's head into the ice a couple times, which, I think in both instances, if you're going to suspend Tom Wilson, or we all think Tom Wilson should have been suspended for that, I think there's an argument that Sidney Crosby should have been suspended for that play as well, or maybe at least a fine. But when you have these situations, I think the big problem that I heard from a lot of people is that people still kind of judge everything by this code. The code of players and whatever, and Tom Wilson should have known that he was 50 pounds heavier and 4 inches taller than Artemi Panarin. It means he should have backed off. That I don't really care. Like, Panarin's jumping on his back. Wilson has every right to defend himself. The way he went about it was reckless and stupid and deserved a suspension. I don't think just because Panarin's smaller and he's a superstar that means Tom Wilson has to back off. I think that argument is ridiculous. Like, JG Pageau is small as hell, but he'll get in your face and he'll try and fight you. And does that mean every enforcer has to back off because a small guy is coming after him? I don't think so. I wouldn't support that side of the argument. But it doesn't excuse the fact that what Wilson did was ridiculous. And whether he did that to Panarin or Buchnevich or a fourth liner or a no name, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean the fact that he did it to Panarin makes it any worse, or at least it shouldn't, just because Panarin's a great player and he's a superstar. Punching a guy's head into the ice when he's on the ground is not okay. And pulling a guy to the ice, whether it's in a scrum or not, I don't care. A guy with no helmet, pulling him down to the ice by his hair, head first, is a dangerous play. It's a reckless play. And when you have those plays happening, I feel like the Department of Player Safety needs a bit more, leeway to make a decision without interference from the NHL, where they can look at that play, whether the rule book says it's okay or not, I really don't care. You can tell by that play it's reckless. That should go into the decision. How reckless of a play was it? A guy got injured. It wasn't a head injury. It doesn't matter. He got injured. He's out for the rest of the season. Panarin is. And prior history should go into that as well, which it does in some occasions, but it should have in here. Tom Wilson has been suspended this season, I think, for 7 games. Been suspended multiple times throughout his career, and has a history of these types of reckless plays. Like, I don't understand how you come out of this without a suspension for Tom Wilson. And a $5,000 fine is okay. And I think that's the big problem I have with it. And the big problem I had with the guys in the chat was trying to absolve Parros from the situation and saying it's just the league and it's a league issue and Parros is a puppet and he does whatever the league wants. Some of that might be true, but at the end of the day, Parros could have made a decision, went against the league, suspended him because that was the right thing to do, and he didn't. So I would think that in this situation, Parros and the league are equally to blame for not putting the right decision out there. And when you go in, what did you expect in this game? He didn't get suspended. You knew he was going to play the same team a day later, and we get 6 fights in the first 4 minutes of the game, and Wilson gets a misconduct, and then magically it has an upper body injury for the rest of the game. It doesn't come back. And then the game calms down, and then nothing happens for the rest of the game. At the very least, you have to have some sort of understanding that if you don't suspend him, this was going to happen, and more guys could have got hurt because of that in this game. 6 fights, who knows how those go, and some dirty hits and some dirty plays happened in that game, and more guys could get hurt. At the very least, you should have suspended him for this game and him not take place in this game, just to avoid what took place tonight and more potential injuries.
This whole thing, it's just, it was handled so poorly. I don't know, on like every single level. And yeah, I mean, what I also just found just hilarious is just, he's got an upper body injury from the 2 fights he had. And it's like, how much is that upper body going to injure him and keep him out of the lineup next game? He'll be back out there. He was out there tomorrow in practice. I guarantee it. That was pretty much, hey, listen, about the only other thing that's going to happen is you're going to have to get in one more fight. That'll be your third, and they're going to kick you out. So why even risk it? We'll just move along from this. But even then, it's kind of like,
or get involved in something that does get you suspended, and you do miss time in the playoffs. That's the last thing the Capitals want, is Tom Wilson missing time in the playoffs. He's, as scummy as he is, he's exactly the type of player you want to have in playoff hockey, because outside of the nasty and unethical, or whatever you want to call it, things that he does, he is a type of player you want on your team. Plays on the edge. He's a physical player. He's a power forward. He's got enough skill to put the puck in the back of the net. He's going to stick up for the star players on your team. And the only problem is he goes over the line sometimes in a dangerous way. But
yeah, and like Steven also said, is you won't catch this guy fighting other heavyweights. He tends to end up getting in fights with guys who are smaller, who are, not necessarily fighters and don't have a whole lot of fighting majors. So it seems like he kind of picks his targets a little bit better. But you're 100% right in that Tom Wilson is the way. This is my opinion, I guess, a little bit, is that's the way you'd want a player to play hockey. He can score, he can set up players, he creates space, and he's an intimidating player to play against. And that's how you want to do it. He plays it on the edge, but too often some players, even though they play it to the edge, they overstep that line. And I feel like he definitely did it on this one. He's done it in the past, already been suspended earlier this season. And then if you're truly caring about player safety, you have to look at, well, has this person learned from any other suspension or fine that we've done? And it didn't look like he learned.
He flexed in the box, my opinion. After taking both these guys out.
He thought he was a badass. He thought he was a rock star. And at that point, it's just like, okay, so the message ain't getting through. And giving him a $5,000 fine isn't even going to do that. He goes, okay, so everything I did, as long as it's in a scrum, I can kind of do whatever I want. I mean, obviously with some exceptions. He's not going to Happy Gilmore and take his skate off and start stabbing people. But there's, his threshold to be able to do what he wants is a little bit wider. He realizes, okay, I can ragdoll somebody. I can start punching people in the bottom of the head, and it cost me $5,000. Let me wait 20 minutes, and I made $5,000. And there you go. Yeah, so it cost them 20 minutes of game time.
Give me 7 games and get in the clear a little bit of between one instant to another, and I'm okay, right? And it starts painting like a dangerous line of what's okay and what's not okay in this league, and a lot of it's to do with the inconsistency of the NHL and the Department of Player Safety, of their punishments that they put out there. It needs a whole, we've been saying this for years, but it needs a whole revamp of how they assess these. And I think a lot of it has to do is that the Department of Player Safety needs to be able to operate without interference from the NHL and from the PA. They need to be able to make these decisions as an independent party, and their punishments are upheld. There's no way for the PA to appeal. There's no way for the NHL to get involved and say, no, that's not okay. And then the panel itself would obviously have to be picked carefully and properly. But there needs to be something that happens, because we've been talking about the inconsistency forever. This is another chapter in a long book of inconsistency and ridiculous calls by the Department of Player Safety that largely kind of hinder on the rules and the way the rules are written in terms of misconduct and how you can punish players in this league. And clearly something's wrong. And this is where you get into the issue, like I said, you're painting a dangerous line of, players start to see, okay, I can do that. All right, I can do that, and I can only get a $5,000 fine. Like, if Wilson only got a $5,000 fine, I might escape with nothing, because this guy has prior history and was suspended this year. If I do this, then I might get away with nothing, or I might get a warning or a slap on the wrist or whatever. And you start getting these other guys who are players like Tom Wilson who say, okay, this is what I can get away with. And in a playoff series, maybe I can throw Panarin down to the ice or Crosby down to the ice or whatever, and I'm not going to get, suspended a couple games, and this is not going to hurt my team. I might be out for 5 minutes or whatever, or get a penalty on the play, but, I did my job. And that's where you get into, these dangerous situations of guys kind of start thinking this is okay. And guys like Tom Wilson start thinking, okay, I know what I can get away with. And like you said, my threshold has gone up. I can start doing this, and this is the max I can do until I do something a bit worse. And okay, do I get away with it this time? And where does it go up the ladder here, where the one thing he does is so bad that he finally gets suspended for it, right? And you don't want that to be severely injuring a player, but that's where you kind of feel like it's going towards.
Yeah, and once again, I'd steer personally away from what happened with Panarin versus what happened with Bushevich. The fact that he was down on the ice, prone position, literally Tom Wilson's stick is on the dude's neck, and he's lifting with the stick and punching down on his head. That's where I kind of go, dude, that's not $5,000. I mean, that's a potential serious injury. The Panarin thing, once again, that's maybe more of a scramble, and the outcome wasn't that great. And obviously, he maybe was a little bit over aggressive, but at the same time, that doesn't bother me nearly as bad as the play that initiated everything afterwards. So that's where I would have focused a little bit better, where you can make a discretion that is absolutely reckless. It puts somebody in immediate harm. And he looked at it. He saw it. He knew where his stick was. It's underneath the dude's neck, and you're punching.
Yeah.
And for a play that's done, it's over. There's no need for it. If you want to wait for him to get up and push him and then, maybe start a confrontation after, I get it. But the dude is prone. He literally can't move all that much, and you're just sitting there lifting and punching down.
Yeah. There's an intent to injure there.
That's where I start going, okay, dude, something more than $5,000, because that's just obvious to me.
And like I said, at the very least, I don't understand how you don't suspend him for the next game where you're playing the same team. Like, how do you not sit there? We all knew this was going to happen. Like, I sat there and joked to you guys, like, oh, I'm definitely starting Tom Wilson in fantasy because he's going to pick up some penalty minutes for me, because it was so obvious.
That went well for you.
He was definitely going to fight. He was likely going to get a game misconduct, and he got both. And the Caps felt like, okay, well, we're going to, it's obviously not 100% confirmed, but we're going to make up an injury, and he's not going to play for the rest of the game because, one, we don't want him to get injured. We don't want him to get into something where he can get suspended from, and they take him out. And, it was just
why
so
would you
obvious.
Throw him out there? It's just a super distraction for the rest of the game.
Yeah, it was just so obvious this was going to happen.
It is obvious.
Which is why I don't understand. Like, I don't understand how you give just not even a 1-game suspension.
I don't think they can really come out and say, listen, they're just going to fight him, and we really don't want him to fight right now, so we're just going to take him out. So I think they're going to come up with something.
No, obviously the Caps have to. They can't say
maybe
that.
He's scared. Maybe it's a mental thing.
But I mean, like, on a league level, like, at least hand out a one game suspension, and maybe they felt like they can't, because if they handed out a 1-game, people would, they felt like if they suspended him at all, it would have had to be more than 1 game. And
I think everyone would have thought that that it was because of what he did to Panarin. And
Yeah.
once again, I think if you look at that, then yeah, I can see where you maybe don't give that, but the fact that you can look at what he did to the prone player. So that's the one where I felt like one game was at least definitely warranted just because of how reckless it is.
Yeah.
So what if it's a scrum? But if you go recklessly, if there's a scrum there and you take your stick and just smack someone on the side of the head, well, it was a scrum. These things happen.
Yeah.
No, that's reckless. That's intent to injure. That's exactly what he did there. He used very poor judgment, and there should be a bigger punishment than just a $5,000 slap on the wrist.
Yeah, and the Panarin thing didn't even come up into their decision when they actually mentioned the $5,000 fine. It was just the Buchnevich thing, and I think a lot of it probably hinged on the fact that Buchnevich didn't actually get hurt and didn't have an injury on the play. I think if he did, they would have got a suspension. I don't think it matters. I think the play was reckless and there was intent to injure. Whether he got injured or not shouldn't necessarily factor into the decision on
100%.
whether it's a suspension or not. I think it maybe could factor into how long a suspension is, but it shouldn't factor into should a guy be suspended, because there was, like you said, clearly an intent to injure there, and a play where a guy could have held up there and, like you said, waited till he got up and sure, punch him if he gets up or whatever. But punching a guy's
get
head,
up, and as he's getting up, punch him in the shoulder. Like, what the hell are you doing? And it started a conversation that way, but just the way he went about doing it was just it's reckless, and you got to be able to kind of like check that person, go like, listen, no, you can't do that. You can't act that way. You're mad. Here's how you deal with it. We're going to suspend you a game. Learn your lesson. Don't do it again. We warned you.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many more warnings this guy needs, but it's a pattern at this point. So
yeah. Well, I can't wait to hear Pat Stevens eventually.
Oh, they're screaming.
Thoughts on this? I think Steven went to bed, so he's not. Or, I mean, he just got the vaccine, so who knows what happened to him.
Yeah,
but.
he's probably curling up in his sweater that he has that was knitted.
Oh yeah,
Nice
the infamous sweater. But anyway, we'll be back after the Wild series. Obviously, there's only 2 more games this year. It's a back-to-back Friday, Saturday against the Wild. So as is always the case, we won't be live after Friday. We are planning on hopefully being live for a final post game on Saturday, but Saturdays have kind of proved to be difficult this year for us scheduling a show. So if we're not live with a post game show on Saturday, we'll just be recapping the entire season as a whole. Which we're planning to do a show like that anyway, as like a season recap and kind of looking back on everything, looking at the season as a whole. So if we don't have a post-game show, the next show we do will be that season recap. If not, we'll have both a post-game show on Saturday and an eventual season recap. That will be coming out shortly after. So you can look forward to those 2 shows. I know we had originally planned to do a Pucks and Brews last weekend. I was out of town. And the guys were busy. I know Pat was at the game on Saturday night. So we're a little bit busy and preoccupied last week, but hopefully planning for that either this weekend or the weekend after that, depending on how the post-game show goes for this weekend.
Be tough this weekend since it's Mother's Day.
Yeah, Mother's Day and the potential post-game show on Saturday, and planning a season recap show. So that will be coming soon. We owe our Patreon guys a couple of those. But
I got a couple of really fun games, too. That'll be funny.
Plenty of time coming up in the off season to make up for that and record a bunch of these and put them out. So if you haven't checked out the Patreon yet, we're about to be ramping up the content because we're going to have a lot of free time on our hands to record these episodes. So there'll be a lot of shows going out there. I know Steven and Jay have a bunch of ideas for different topics and different types of shows that we could do. And that's where likely potentially our kind of Seattle preview could land on there. Another draft show, different things like that are going to land on there. So it's only $5 a month if you want to help us out and help support the show, and you get some extra content for it as well. And you get to engage with us all the time in Discord, which is either a blessing or a curse. So
you can see Eddie's pretty face more often.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if that's a benefit or a negative as well, but.
Let the people decide.
We'll let the people decide. But that'll do it for today. Thanks to everybody who's sticking around. A bit of a longer show because we wanted to cover the Tom Wilson situation, but stay tuned. We'll either, like I said, be back Saturday or be back for our season recap in the next coming weeks here. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye, guys.